welcome back to the Becoming Shameless podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Wallace.
And I'm Josiah Baines.
And today, we're just going to do a recap of what we've learned this year. You know, instead of having a distinguished topic, this year is full of life lessons, growth, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes catastrophe, sometimes, many great adventures. But going into that, I'd like to start off with a question. What do you feel are the reoccurring themes that you faced this year or that you learned?
I feel like a reoccurring thing for me is, I guess, to learn the lesson. Like, if you, for me, I went through a lot of, it seems like the same. I don't want to say test, but the same situation or same circumstance that I've been dealing with for like a couple of years and years, and just being able to take a lesson from it, not necessarily come to like a place where you're not going through like the same situation, but like where you're able to draw something from it. So like a lot of people think like, dang, like God got me in this cycle of like trying to learn this same lesson, and until I get out of it, like that's when I'll know I'll pass. Like I know I passed once I'm out the cycle, when really it's when your perspective has changed in the situation, or when you have been able to draw a takeaway or get a revelation for yourself, that the revelation that God wants you to have, and then it's kind of when it'll change. Like, so it's not necessarily like the circumstance changed, but your mindset changed. Yeah, your outlook on it. So
now that's real. Kind of reminds me of people saying like God's not always going to remove the thorn from you, but it's literally He'll teach you how to operate with Him with the thorn. And I think, like you said, like a lot of times we as people, like you said, we always think about the end or it being removed. But what if it's never removed?
Yeah.
Did you feel like will you still learn like if God never heals that leg, how are you gonna operate? And that kind of goes into like me. So me, I'm really big on words. So if you know me personally, I'm big on words. I like to give like different things in my life words. So in 1 month, the word of the month could be, you know what I'm saying. Like I told you earlier, we had talked pit stop for me, but like one of the main recurring themes for me was the word navigate. And I think a lot of times we as humans, though we have emotions and we should feel our emotions, we're too emotional. And I think a lot of times we use our emotions as a crutch or as a justification, even though it doesn't justify anything. And though your feelings may be valid, it shouldn't alter how you navigate things appropriately. So like think about it in scripture, it's like even in your anger, do not sin. That tells you there's nothing wrong with being mad. It's natural to be mad, but in your anger you shouldn't sin. And I think a lot of times we as believers, we operate from a space of emotion, even though we are still called as humans and we're going to know that we're going to feel these emotions, but we're also called to navigate them properly. And that's something I had to learn on myself, but also I think for me, for the most part, is having that grace for others, because as we talk, I noticed a lot of people simply just don't know how to navigate. And it's like, as a human, it's easy to like, cut people off and look down on others. But then, like, as my favorite verse in the Bible is Luke 23, verse 34, and Jesus said, "For they know not what they do, and they part His God." No, he said, and Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do, and they part His garments, casting lots." And it's like people really don't really be knowing; they just simply don't know how to navigate a lot of things. So just having the grace to understand that it's not really necessarily about you; it's something they have to work on within themselves and work out with God. So that's something that I really feel like is important, especially as we're starting to mature, because we're 24 now, and as we become adults, I think a lot of people still operate from a place of childishness, in the sense of their emotions are the rationale that provide justification for their actions, when it shouldn't be that.
I had a real bad problem with that issue, I guess, that you just described, with not letting your emotions kind of navigate or be the justification for you doing something. And it's really like, it kind of got to a point where I never really had myself a problem with like, the whole emotions like being a justification. Like if I was emotional, I'd be like, dang, like
You made me mad.
Nah, I wouldn't be like that, but I would like be very self-aware, but I would kind of go to the extreme. Like it wasn't like I would be emotional, and then I would kind of tone down or like kind of retune or refine my emotions to where I'm able to actually speak, I would just not speak at all. So it would be like, I would just completely shut down. So then like now trying to, like at 24, trying to find a good medium between allowing myself to be emotional, but then also not just completely shut down and not say nothing. Like you still have to be able to communicate. And I feel like, and that's why I really liked Brene Brown. I was really into listening to Brene Brown like a year, 2 years ago, because she was really good with like explaining the fact with the importance of language and in our lives and just having the right words to describe what you're feeling. And so
definitely,
like, I had found a wheel, like
the emotion wheel
on Twitter
before.
Yeah, and it was just like a whole bunch of different words that like are in a subcategory of like their basic emotions when we say we're angry or fearful or sad, and then this gets more descriptive as you go out. And so
oh, y'all should look into it, because my therapist put me on years ago. Like in the middle, it's like you have angry, then you have sad, but a lot of times it's like, okay, it really is so much nuance, because I feel like if you aren't able to identify something, you'll always operate it wrong.
Exactly.
And yeah,
you're mislabeling what it is exactly that you're feeling. Like you might be like, I'm angry right now, when really you're not angry. It might just be like you feel misunderstood, or like you feel like you're overwhelmed, and it's really important to just find the right words for what you're feeling.
Because not just that, if you don't know how to identify, if I was go to the doctor and say, damn, my arm hurt, and they put a band-aid or they put something around it, but it's really my leg, it's still gonna be, my leg's still gonna hurt. And I think that's why a lot of people still operate from a place of being hurt, because they simply don't identify properly what the issue is. No one can help you unless they know exactly what to fix.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with also, like, what I'm saying, humility and humbling yourself, and letting yourself be okay with saying, I'm actually hurt.
Yeah.
I think we have a world where people are so prideful, we don't like to admit that we are wounded, especially by others. Yeah. Like, especially being in a sense like, oh, Josiah, you really hurt my feelings. Most people are not going to go out the way to say that. They're just going to act accordingly. Yeah. And I think something I have to learn is to just humble myself in all things, because really humility goes a long way, and it brings life to so many situations, because most things can be talked out, most things can be fixed if you would just address what the issue is. But I think the problem is pride is a killer, and not just physically, but it kills bonds, relationships, situations, opportunities. And we have to learn to be like, you know what, it's okay, I'm hurt. Now tell the doctor what hurts. Doctor, my stomach hurt. But we're like, you know what, I'm gonna be fine. Yeah. And it's just, I think I'm gonna use this analogy because it's a real situation. Like, men typically don't go to the doctor as much as women, especially black men. Yeah. And I think you see that even with pride. A lot of men aren't as likely to speak about their emotions and feelings of hurt. And because of that, you see a lot of men die younger. And I think that applies to a lot of men, why a lot of men go through a lot of pain, or, honestly, suicide. Because we don't ever tell the doctor what hurts, because our pride won't let us. And I think we have to get to a point of being like, you know what, it doesn't make me weak to address how I feel or to address the situation. But there's so much nuance in that, because, in the society we live in, the patriarchal system, it really is frowned upon. And I think even in a society where people are like, yeah, men need to talk about their feelings more. You don't mean that. You just say that stuff like you always do. They don't mean it, bro. But, like, also, like, that's why it's important to have community and have those spaces for that, too.
And one thing that kind of want to refine, I was about to get to something else. I want to put a pin in it. Remind me of I was watching Dr. Darius Daniels yesterday with my mom. So I'm gonna put a pin in that, and then hopefully I'll just remember it later. But like you were saying about spaces, like it's to have, especially in like the Christian space, like to have a group of people that you can really and I guess it kind of ties into what we were just talking about, like about being informed, like, and how people really just don't take the time, like especially in like the Christian space, like, and I don't know every single Christian space, but like just the spaces that I've been in, like it's a little bit of a prejudice of like there isn't like, I don't want to say a whole lot of real. It's not a whole lot of like real yeah, like realness in the space. It's like, again, it's like just a schedule, it's like you go to church
checklist,
and exactly, you're just checking off your checklist, but like you don't know the person next to you, like you don't know the people in your row, like you don't know who you're sitting next to, like you don't know their you know, you're not informed about them as people, and like it's really hard to kind of narrow down that circle to a good group of people where you can, you know, really express that emotional wheel with. But yeah, that's just one thing that
it's too pretty, bro.
Yeah.
And I think even especially like you see it now, like, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna kind of reference to, like, the women, because you see it more with them, with the aesthetic of it. But like godly girlies, you feel me? And it's like Bible study, this and this, and pretty Bibles, pretty notes, different colored pens, and it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's all talking about good time and your blessings, but it's like a lot of people don't really know how to do life with each other when it's ugly and rugged.
Yeah.
And I've noticed even with, like, say, like me and like my experiences when it comes to, because, you know, I've been a Christian most of my life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Basically all my life. But I will say a lot of people, they love the gospel or Christianity in Christian spaces when it's all God, glory, love, happiness, and blessings and good times.
Yeah.
But they don't know how to deal with the sadness, misery, confrontation of it. And it's like, that's why I feel like it's like a realness, because I think we've put such a prettiness on Jesus when Jesus literally calls things out.
Yeah.
So we're in a space that we preach a God that's appeasing, that, you know, love like, you know, sunshine, rainbows. But also we seen, you know what I'm saying, Jesus, I recall him calling him, like, basically calling Peter the devil. You feel me? Like a real raw conversation, real raw like openness. But it's like there's so much perfectionism in the walk that these spaces don't really leave much room for realness. And if you are real in this space, then you are ostracized to an extent, because it's like that's a taboo thing to address. And I think we need to have spaces of just raw realness, which is why we started the podcast.
And like just talking about relationships and having a real relationship, that's what sharpening iron is supposed to look like. Like, not like, you know, when you really have like two people who are like trying to sharpen each other, like it's a lot of like cutting, because that's what, like, you're cutting on one another. Like that's what happens when you're sharpening iron. And so, like, you know, just reevaluating and really, for me, like during the year, like coming to an understanding of what it looks like to really, one, be a Christian, and really just a human in general, like the ups and downs of life, like understanding that, like Jesus said, in this life you will suffer. Like it's like that goes for everybody, and that's like a human thing. So like, understanding that at first, and then, you know, understanding that in other people's lives, and like other people have suffered, and you know, I had lost my my grandmother like in October, and now that really kind of like shifted my perspective and like my morality clock personally, of just like, you know, we don't got, I told you guys in the group chat, like, you know, we got to be more intentional with our parents and stuff like that. And it's just, it was a really a big year of just really understanding. I feel like I understood a lot more just about people in general, about Christians, about God, and like I just had learned a whole lot, and I'm grateful for and it's funny because, you know, in hindsight, everything just is way more clear. So I'm super grateful for everything that happened this year, and yeah.
No, for sure. And so when you were saying that, it made me think. When we were talking about the space, I think with Christianity, where a big fall can be for a lot of people is we chase comfortability, and we've been taught a comfortable gospel, comfortable Christian bonds, comfortable conversations, even within the faith, to the point I think we are very limiting. And that's something I have to realize. Like, we limit how. Last week we talked about secular spaces and how we show up, but we limit how God shows up, and that always bothers me, because if it doesn't have the word Jesus stamped on, name Jesus stamped on it, we just don't think it's from God or of God. And that's something that I strongly don't like. And I think in this year, I've learned to not limit how God can show up. I mean, I was talking to this one guy, and his exposure to God was hearing a Chance the Rapper song. And you know, as we as humans, we'll be like, oh, don't. Some people will be like, oh, you can't listen to no secular music, da da da. And it's like, if that person never heard God through Chance the Rapper, who's a secular rapper, then he wouldn't have been here. And I feel like we gotta stop putting limits on God. If we put limits on God, we'd be other religions. No shade. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's limited. But I think because we put limits on God, we limit ourselves, and because we're chasing comfortability, most of the time, we don't fulfill what God requires of us. Like, for example, we're called to love others. What is love? First thing it says, love is patient. The moment you may address them with me, right? And because I don't do my own inner work, I don't have that patience with you. So the moment you say that I don't like, be gone. And I think that's how a lot of us have operated, because we've made the gospel about ourselves and how God benefits us. Like, a lot of times we'll be like, you know what I'm saying, God's not a God of confusion. God being not a God of confusion or the author of confusion does not require you to not think.
And bro,
like, what? Like, let's really, like, you know what I'm saying?
Like, he's not the author of confusion, so it's supposed to be easy. So it's supposed to be easy for me to understand. Like, that's not what that means. Like, just because it's not, God is not confusing, but you are confused.
And you know why you're confused? Because you're double-minded. And it says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. That's in James. And it's like, there's so many things because we've been taught a principle gospel and how the Bible's about us. We don't operate with others properly. Like, we're so quick to dismiss the very people God's called us to love on and not show up to spaces because we feel like, and it's so much nuance and gray areas where people try to justify their either cowardice behavior or their dismissive behavior. And it's really not an in-between a lot of times within the faith. Like, even then, like, a lot of people, I think they'll be like, you know what I'm saying, I'm not finna have this conversation because, you know what I'm saying, if God did not give me a spirit of fear and anxiety, yeah, he didn't give you a spirit of fear and anxiety, but you're sitting here acting like the people in the Bible. When God told Jonah to go to Nineveh, he was scared. That doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It just shows that fear is not from God. And because people feel like, oh, I feel these emotions, having to deal with this issue, deal with this person, that doesn't mean that God didn't call you there.
I think dealing with your emotion, I think separating the statement of dealing with your emotions and then feeling emotions when you feel like God has called you to something, or when you feel like you're going through something. Like, there's a difference between you having those emotions and then, like, spiritually, like, those spiritual, like a spirit of fear or a spirit of anxiety, or like those spirits actually like trying to attack you. Like, it's a very, and if you, like we were talking about earlier, like being informed and trauma informed and stuff about people, like you, and that's why, like, we talk about therapy being a really good tool. Like, you got to understand, like, a lot of the stuff that you're going through and a lot of the emotions and like the spiritual attacks that you feel like you're feeling are rooted from back when, you know, you might have been younger, or like an incident happened, or just over time, like stuff, like you didn't come out of the womb with a spirit of fear. Like, you didn't come out the womb with, I mean, of course, like generationally, like there could be like hints, but generational, like to me, generational blessings or curses, as people would say, are just invitations. Like, so if my dad was an adulterer, like the spirit of adultery is an invitation. Like, I get to choose whether I want to accept it or not accept it. So, and then again, like, you still have to make that conscious choice to accept it, and even unconsciously sometimes we accept it. But like I was saying, it's important to separate the difference between your emotions that have been there and just stuff that you need to work through, versus like spiritually, like a spiritual attack from different spirits. Like, it's two totally different things, because a lot of the stuff, like, you just gotta be able to work through, like, on like work out your soul salvation. Like, you gotta be able to work out your own soul, like work out the stuff that's going on in your own soul, so that you can
fear and trembling.
Exactly. So that you can walk out your salvation. So,
but then also on the grand scale, like I said, like it's hard for people to get to that point if they're being fed a gospel and a Jesus that's comforting. Like, you know, Jesus the comforter, Jesus the healer, not the one who tells you get up and go. But the people, like, for example, the lame man, get up, go walk. You know what I'm saying? Not just, oh, is your leg okay? You know, it's okay. You know why? You know, do this. You're gonna be all right. Get up and go. And I think we haven't been really pushed to get up and go. I know my church, we talk about seek, serve, and launch, but I think on a large scale, most people have been taught to sit in their comfort, and someone's going to comfort them. And yes, God gives comfort to those who are grieving, but it doesn't mean that He's just going to be over your shoulder, just telling you all things you want to hear. You're still being called to go and move forward. And I think we need to learn how to operate in movement, not always in stagnation. And I think because we're too focused on ourselves. We're self-serving, and we're very self-consumed as a society in general. And I think it affects us spreading the gospel, us operating within the gospel and living it out. And that's just something like I have to really work on. And I feel like in that, it kind of goes back to a word we were talking before this, where I feel like the word for me, I guess, in this season is pit stop. Sometimes in life we're just a pit stop. We make everything about us, even our relationships, and it's like, oh, this person's supposed to be with me forever, and they did me wrong. But what if God really just put you there to be a pit stop to fuel and energize this person so they can get on to their destination, so they can operate in the purpose God called them to? It's not all about me. And I've learned to be okay sometimes with being a pit stop or a butt stop, because at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, it's not really all about me. I'm here in this moment. I could be like, dang, we fell out, but at the same time, through me, you met somebody that helped you start your business. That was what I was there for. I didn't have to be the person that you were besties or your husband. I was a pit stop, and that's okay. And I think once we learn to stop making things about us, because we're a body, I might be the arm, but you the leg. The arm and the leg aren't side by side most of the time. And if you are, you have to stretch to do it. You know what I'm saying? You have to stretch to do it. So it's like, you just being okay with fulfilling a role and you not being the star player. Because I think in the world that we're the star. Everybody's around, this is role players. No, we're a role player on the team for Christ. And Jesus is the main character. God, the Father is the main character. The Holy Spirit is. So we just learn to be okay with that. I feel like we could operate better with others and within ourselves. But that takes a lot of humility, which I always talk to you about. I say the hardest thing for anybody to do is to humble themselves. Because pride is, ego is to this, you know.
I was trying to think about that message yesterday by Dr. Darius Daniels, because that's like, I was listening to it and it was a good message, but and at the same time it was just kind of like, I don't know, I've always had like this kind of like outlook on like just not people, but like in general, like my thought process has always been like, whenever I hear something, I instantly apply it to me instead of like applying it to somebody else. And I'm trying to remember like what Dr. Darius was saying. And like the church was like going like, people in the church were going crazy, and they was like, and I was like, dude, like that whole time, like I was just sitting there thinking about like going through like in my head, like when have I, done this, or when has this showed up in my life before, like before I think about when has somebody done this to me or something. But dude, I'm about to look it up. Hold on.
Everything you're saying though, it kind of reminds me of like, I feel like we don't actually care about people. Like we really don't. I think we say we care in the grand scheme, like, oh, somebody lost somebody. Oh, I'm sorry for your loss. Yeah. But you don't genuinely care to actually be active in that person while they're mourning. You're just saying it to be appeasing. Yeah. And I think we are really called to love others, but love is action. We don't actually love by action. We love, quote unquote, by our feeling of sympathy for somebody. And because of that, we have a very lazy love. Like, we don't sit there and, I'm going to pull up your crib and I'm just going to let you cry on my shoulder. I'm just going to send you a text and, oh, well, at least I said sorry for your loss. You get what I'm saying? And I think because of that, we limit how many people we can really affect, but also show them God's love. Because we actually don't care to show up. We care to just say, like a party. You don't care to actually go to the party, bring a gift, and spend time and be involved. You want to just show face. and we got comfortable in just showing face for people as human beings. And that's something that I grieve. Like me personally, I feel like I've grieved a lot, and not that I've lost, but and starting to have a real love for others. I'm so hurt by how many people I see don't actually care about each other, and we try to pass it off as we do, or we try to make it all about ourselves. Like, you know what? I'm not pouring into anybody who's not pouring into me. But you're like we said about how people have their own traumas. What if they actually can't? What if they want to and they can't? But you don't care to understand their story. You just want to write them off because you want to get back to your next chapter. And that is so sad to me. It breaks my heart, bro. Like, real talk.
I think that it's on a practical level, like something that I personally like had to start doing was like a lot of times, you know, we'll say like I don't have time for that, or like, you know, I can't like deal with that right now. Like really take back and look. Like, do you really not have time for that?
You don't
or
want
like,
to.
do you really not have like the capacity to deal with it? Because, like I'll be driving or something, and say I get a text. You get a text that'll be like, "Can you?" My mom texts me and said, "Can you stop by the store and get this?" And be like, "Damn, like, I'm really trying to get where I'm trying to go." And it's like, does it really like take so much time out of where I gotta go to be able to just stop by the store and pick up something for my mom real quick, or like, you know, just to do something simple, or like somebody asked you to help, or a lot of times I see now on the street, like I realize we don't help people no more. Like I remember when I was growing up younger, like somebody was on the side of the road, like there would be like at least one or two people that'll pull up next to me and be like, "Yo, you alright?"
I see people push people's cars back in the day,
like,
and that neutral, yeah.
Like it's like, and it was even more like before us. So like now it's really just like somebody be stuck on the road and you just like look at it.
Inconvenience. I feel like we hate to be inconvenienced by actually caring for others. Because to care for others to do something, but to actually have to be there, it inconveniences us because we want to focus on ourselves. If I was to pull over and help you, I don't get to binge watch my show. I might be a little bit late. I might miss the first quarter of the game. And I'm like, we've gotten so selfish. But we've been selfish. I feel like it's getting worse, but it's like on a grand scale, I think we aren't who we think we are. None of us. I think a lot of times we think ourselves to be better than we are. And humility, you know, the Bible says, like, think of yourselves lower than others. You feel me? And I think we think so highly of us, like, oh, I'm a good person. And, you know, I always say this as an example. You think you call yourself a good person because you care about the somebody you're dating, but you won't even give a homeless man $1, $1, because he might use it. And it's like this person, and then go back to the thing about trauma. You're like, oh, he gonna use this $1 to go get alcohol or get beer, bro. You realize this man it's 20 degrees outside. It's freezing. He just wants to feel warm. He wants to escape his problems. But when you go to the club on Saturday and do the same thing, it's not a problem. But he can't escape his reality. And it's crazy because I was reading the Bible. My phone. I'm using my phone. But like, there's a verse where it's like, it really says, alcohol is for poor people, for them to forget their sorrows. So even God understands why, and I think we don't care to really understand a person's traumas and why they operate. We just want to tell them they're wrong, and they shouldn't do that. And though I feel like that's the problem, we never learn how to lead with love. We lead with being right, and that's why people who aren't believers don't like us. They're like, oh, you're just gonna tell me this, tell me I'm sinning, come go to hell. And it's like, did you ever just ask them, like, how's your day? How you doing? I had an encounter the other day. Cause I saw people posting TikToks, and I was talking about like why people don't believe, like why, like the problem with the argument. And then some guy in my comments was going back and forth with this lady who was like an atheist. So I hit her on the side. I'm like, look, I'm not even about to have this conversation like, oh, I'm right or wrong. I just want to have a real conversation with you. And I was like, I want to know first, how are you doing? And that led to a genuine conversation. But it's like, you already telling somebody they're wrong, they gonna get defensive. How's their day? You don't even know this person just lost somebody.
Exactly.
You don't know what they're going through. You don't know somebody, they could be infertile. They might have all these problems. You sitting here trying to tell them why they're right or wrong versus asking how they are as a human.
And that's where I feel like actually when we talk about being like Jesus, that's where I feel like that starts. Like in that right there.
Lead with your humanity.
Exactly. And that's exactly what Jesus did. He led with it in every situation. He led with his humanity. Jesus
wept. He knew he was gonna raise them. He knew he was gonna raise them up. But before he did that, what he do? He wept with them.
Like that's and when I've thought about this so much.
He did.
I can't remember the exact address of the verse, but it was saying the path is narrow. The path that leads to life is narrow, and the path that leads to destruction is wide.
Right, yeah.
And the more and more I've always felt like since I was younger, like that path is way more narrow than we actually think it is. Like it's like we'll say now, like when I was younger, it'll be like, you know, you see like the artists, like the BET Awards, but I want to thank God, da, 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 da. And you know, at first you think like everybody that calls the name of the Lord is saved, when it's not true. But and even like just refining that to like everybody who was saved or like a Christian at once, like, you know, even though,
or they said that they did a sinner's prayer.
Exactly, they did a sinner's prayer. Like, you know, I've always been fascinated with the idea of just like this is like way more narrow of a path than we really think it is. And then I really feel like leading with your humanity, and like when you talk about being like Jesus and like putting like, because when you do that, you have to crucify yourself. Like when you do certain stuff like that, like you have yourself. Like it's more than just like going to church, read, you know, all that stuff is important, yes, but when you get to like the essence of just like, I have to now, like if I'm a Christian, I have to, before I even try to evangelize or do something like that, like I have to deny my want to be right and my want to like be the superior religion or whatever it is, and I literally just have to talk with them and like sit with them and listen to them,
bro. Uh-huh. You claim God, is this simple. If you want to know you're saved, it shows. How do you treat people? If you claim that you accept Jesus, because that is important, you have to do that. But also, you want to know you're saved, let me see how you treat people.
People that are not in your circle, people who are not like you,
people who are different.
Can you go to another country and you not be like stuck up, or like you like have like these presuppositions that you have that you develop? Like, is there?
You know, it's crazy, bro. I was talking to Jess about this because there's a verse in Revelations where it's like, cowards will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. And I think even when you so your example of if you go to another country, a lot of people they'll be like, you know, I'm a Christian, I'm saved, I'll read my Bible, I'll go somewhere, and I'm gonna stay to myself. If you a coward and you won't even share the gospel, then how can you love others? If we're called to love others and you're staying to yourself, you're still not operating under the virtues of Christ. You're not loving others. You know what I'm saying? You're not being kind to others if you're not interacting with them. You're not showing patience to others if you're not interacting with them. And I feel like it literally boils down. How do you treat people? Not people who claim they're Christians too. That's why we always talk about, like, you know, Pastor Mark talks about like, oh, you in church, you know all the Bible, but you don't know love. How do you treat people? It kind of boils down to that. And that's why I feel like it's narrow, because we have a God that serves us, that we've been conditioned. A God that serves us. We don't serve a God that calls us to serve others. And the one that we call to serve others, we only want to serve those who agree with us.
And that's another big one for me for the year. A question I had to ask myself, and I feel like I kind of started asking that like a couple of years ago, like, can you minister in silence? And that not being silence in word, but silence in, can I minister to somebody without hitting them upside the head with a whole bunch of scripture or the Bible or something? Like, can I evangelize to somebody with just my actions? Like, am I being light? And that's more than just, I post on my Instagram going to church. I post on my Instagram me reading my Bible.
What a great Sunday.
Exactly. Can when I walk out the church doors and I go to my Starbucks or my
crazy, bro.
Local.
I like how you brought up light, because obviously being a light. But even a light just lights a room. A light doesn't say. It's not,
exactly.
A light just simply.
A light ministers in silence.
It just shows.
Exactly.
And I think in that, we talked about before, like in the other pod, like the ministry of presence. And I think we don't know how to have a ministry of presence because I think it's in 1 Corinthians. It's like, it's kind of basically saying, if you don't know love as a believer, and your words basically like clanging cymbals. And I think a lot of us are just clanging cymbals because we talk a good game, but we don't know how to love others. And I think a lot of us do because, especially in Western culture, love is a feeling more than it is action. And a lot of times love is for us to benefit, not for others to. So even if we're called to bear fruit, who eats the fruit, not you. The other's supposed to eat off your fruit.
Exactly.
And from that, they produce fruit and more seeds are planted. And we think about planting seeds as a thing for us, like, yeah, I did the job, I planted the seed. But in reality, we're called to be there for others, even if we get nothing out of it. And if you look throughout, like, scripture, a lot of people in the story, there's many times where people have done stuff and they weren't the benefactors. Mm-hmm. They might have rewarded later, but in that, they don't get the instant gratification of doing, you know what I'm saying, the blessing instantly. It comes after long suffering and all those things, but we are always thinking of ourselves and thinking, oh, by saying, oh, I feel bad it's happening to somebody, that's showing love. Like, no, you really feel bad about that person losing somebody? Go to their house and just sit in silence. Just shut up. Just go there, shut up, and just let them talk their head off. A lot of times, even when it comes to friendship, I understand to an extent where, like, you know what, I don't want to hear somebody coming to me about the same issue, but I think even those interactions sometimes can show us in a sign of love, because sometimes, are you able to be in a space where somebody's venting and not provide a solution, and just listen? I've been working on that myself. I struggle with that. I ain't gonna lie.
I'm really bad at that. I'm sitting here trying to look at this freaking.
And I think that's the thing too. I think a lot of times, because I ain't gonna lie, like, I was talking to one of my friends, and like I was coming to them with great joy about something. Yeah. And I was like, in my head, it's like, I understand sometimes we could be like inquisitive, but in my head I'm like, I'm not even mad at the friend, but it's like after some spending time with God, because you know when you talk about God to somebody, you tell you about yourself, and I realized that's how I was. Sometimes at people's moments of joy, just be quiet and cheer with them. Like, there's one of my bros, he used to come to me about certain stuff, and it's kind of like, I always be like, does that seem feasible? Does it feel like this? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the intended purpose? And it's like, bro, he's coming with the great joy. Now I'm sowing the seed of doubt. How often do we know how to just shut up? Really? And that might sound like, ooh, that's mean, but I think a lot of Christians, we don't know how to shut up. Knowing when to shut up, that's important. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta know when of course you gotta spread the gospel, but knowing when to shut up is important. Like we were talking before, like somebody just told you how they were molested, you gonna sit there and say, you know, God let me know it for a purpose. Shut up and let that person grieve. Let that person grieve. We're selfish. That we gotta say what we gotta say, and I think that in practicality, that's why a lot of times, cause my biggest thing is, bro, I'm trying to help increase the kingdom, and I think, and a lot of times, most things we do is a projection, but we have to do the work inward first. We're always telling everybody else to do the work. We're always pointing outward. Let's change how we think inwardly and act more like Christ, because a lot of times we think we're operating in the virtues of Christ, and we're doing things that even Christ never did in His name. And that makes sense why people be like, many will come in and say, Lord, Lord, have I not done this in your name? And He'll say, I never knew you. You're doing something in His name He never even said, or that He never even did. You still looking for the D.D. Daniels?
Yeah, I'm trying, but he all the stuff Jesus did, it wasn't complicated stuff. Put aside the miracles.
Simplicity.
Like, it was very just everyday, normal. Jesus was a chill guy. He was a chill guy. He was a chill guy. Jesus was a
very chill dude.
Like, he did miracles, but besides the miracles he did, he was just.
I feel like it's so simple that it complicates stuff. There's a lot of simplicity, but I think our emotions are the thing that make it hard to operate properly. And it's like, that's why I'm really big on reflecting on like how I could be better, but not getting too caught up in my past. But I think a lot of times, like I said, we avoid the feeling of being uncomfortable, and that's what kills a lot of stuff in our ministry, because we're not okay with being uncomfortable, because we're called, like I said, we keep being taught a comfortable gospel and a comfortable Jesus. We won't know how to operate in spaces that are uncomfortable, and a lot of times the spaces that God's going to call you to are uncomfortable. For example, you think Jonah felt comfortable going to Nineveh? He literally went into a boat with strangers just to avoid doing that.
And that's just kind of, I mean, the Bible doesn't go into like super detail, like super specific detail about every single thing the person did and whatever. Like when Moses was crossing the Red Sea, like it doesn't give you like descriptions of what Moses was feeling, or it doesn't give you descriptions of how David was feeling when he slayed, like just like a big story, because those are the stories that honestly like that are mostly taught in the church. Like we don't sit there and talk about like how whatchamacallit, Whose donkey was that?
Donkey?
Yeah.
The one that was talking?
Yeah.
I don't recall the name, but
But
I know the story.
But even that, like, just increasing our biblical IQ, increasing our biblical IQ. I feel like that is a big thing that I personally had to learn over the years. It's just like being more literate in the Bible and knowing more than just
John 3:16.
Exactly. Or like the simple stories of the Bible. Like
I don't know.
That like I need but anyways, what was I saying at first? I forgot.
I don't know, but I was following you. I was following you so far. I don't know where we were.
But yeah, I couldn't find that Darius Daniels jump. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at it. I just can't remember what exactly.
No, that's all good. But shit, I just feel like I feel like like for me this year, bro, I've learned to have an actual like a real heart for others. Like act like I'm not gonna disclose everything I've done to people. You know, don't let your left arm when you're getting arms. But at the same time, it's like in that I have breathed so much from people's place of arrogance, including my own. Whereas like I thought I was somebody I wasn't in reality because of my emotions, but in reality and practicality is simple. Do like with God, we try to complicate it about our emotions, but even in if you're afraid, do it. You know what I'm saying? And obedience in spite of how you feel. And I think that's how we should operate with loving others. Like, even though, you know, you could get on my nerves, bro, let me still show up. But we've been taught that things are supposed to serve us. And that's why I feel like a lot, you know, I be talking, for me, I'm really into theology and, like, you know, sometimes apologetics, I'm not gonna lie. And, like, I was talking about how, like, a lot of the arguments that are based on logic aren't logical to denounce Christianity or God. It's emotional. And I think once we learn how to properly navigate our feelings, then we can operate more like Christ. But we keep weaponizing our feelings and then trying to use the Bible to justify why we do things, then we're going to still be in the same place that we're in.
And one thing that I guess we can talk about that off camera because it's not really has anything to do with.
Well, the topic is what we learned this year, so
yeah, but it has to do with more just like apologetics in general.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I don't got nothing else.
Man, I learned a lot because this year I moved out on my own, and it's forced me to.
Yeah.
It forced you to really think.
Yeah.
Like I'm forced into spaces to where I really had no choice but to humble myself and be honest. With myself on why I do things and how I go about it. And sometimes I really learned. Well, in this season, I've learned so much of how even when you're trying to be right, you could be wrong. And I was listening to Preston Perry say this. He was like, God's not so God. Dang, I don't have my notes. But God is not always telling you what you're doing is wrong because of your action, but it's your heart. And I think my heart posture has been revealed to me so much where I fall short. And in that, it's not that I'm a bad person. Well, none of us are good. I don't believe in concept. Only God is good. Yeah. But it's like in that it shows there's so much room and space for us to grow as humans and in our walk with Christ. So I don't feel like we should never be completely satisfied where we are, content where we are. We should always keep trying to grow and fulfill ourselves. But I think we have gotten so big on checking off boxes that we aren't really aware. And yes, God says that's great, but at the same time, we can still be better. And I think we're all called to be better. So getting stagnant within our own faith, that's the thing I have to work on, because I think when you fall off, like I had a good Bible streak for 407 days, broke it, bro, and I was so devastated, and it showed me that, oh wow, like I really got caught in routine rather than just relationship, because it's like, okay, I broke the streak Friday, okay, bounce back, spend more time with God, but it's like getting too ritualistic within the relationship with God. And I think we as people have done that with God, and we've let it flow to others. And I'll say this, for example, I've noticed the more I've talked to people think communication, or they treat it like it's a burden. Like people really actually get overwhelmed by the fact that you should text somebody back, and that is kind of concerning.
That's crazy.
But am I lying though?
It take these days. It takes the average people our age and young, 25 and younger. It takes them at least to send a text message for less than 5 seconds, which is crazy.
Yeah, and yeah, and it's just crazy to me. So like, yeah, like just learn to have the heart for others and actually, basically, what I'm saying is have a heart for others, show up, do the internal work, but also acknowledge that there's always more room for us to grow, and you're never above reproach, and how we navigate people really is important. That's like my overall themes for this year for me personally, and forgiveness, because people don't be knowing better. They're just not there yet, and I think a lot of times we might get to the other side of the road, and then we'll look at somebody else like, why are you over there? And I think reminding ourselves of where we were at one point and allotting that grace for other individuals, because we're really big on trying to receive grace, but not operate in giving others that same level of grace. But yeah, that's pretty much what I learned in 2024.
I feel like a big thing that can kind of trigger that for a lot of people is messing up, because like I personally like had a messed up, and not just messing up, but letting somebody you really care down, like really like breaking when you are able to step away and like from a situation and be like, dang, like I really effed up, like I'm like the onus is on me, like I really messed that up, and then having to deal with the
that breaks you,
like
boy.
dude, like that.
I feel that all the time.
Everything you just said, like the concept, like that you have of yourself, like the way you view yourself, like being able to be more operating in grace for other people, like all of that stuff was like I feel like it's wrapped up in when you mess up and you actually own the fact that like, no, I'm like,
that was on me like, that was time.
Like, dude, that, and especially when you got to deal with somebody else like telling you met, like, dude, like that,
like, you know,
boy,
it'll humble you quick.
And that's probably like I feel like when Paul was talking about having a thorn, like there's so many thorns that you can have that you can, but that's one thing I would say, like, and that was a little over a year ago, but like I'm truly thankful for every single F up, every single mess up that I've made, bro. Like that's like the biggest,
you can learn from it.
Biggest trophy, I feel like. Not the fact that I messed up, but the fact that I can, you know, have takeaways from it, and that's a mindset too.
It is a mindset.
A lot of people don't got that. I need to have a takeaway from stuff. Like, they'll mess up, be like, oh well, and just keep it moving.
Nah, for sure. But anything else?
Nah, man, that's it.
Hey, I hope everybody has a great 2025 and may God bless you. But also, don't just be focused on God blessing you. Bless others. And I hope if you're going to church at the end of the year, you continue it throughout the full year. Serve others. It's not just about you. Love you, though. Till next time.